Alright, welcome to the second half of my final project. It is currently 4:36 in the morning. I've hopefully done all of my troubleshooting. But let's get into this. The second half is going to be talking about the food and food histories and why they're important and why these foods are what make New Orleans important. There's certain histories about them that make them niche enough where they are important. But starting off with what I think is the most important food, the po' boy. The reason why the po' boy is important is it was invented by two brothers who worked for a railway company, like a red car, a street car. The reason why the sandwich is important is because it fed red car workers, those people who were laid off because they struck, weren't unionized. These men who wanted to eat, had to eat, young boys trying to start a family, the poor boys were given a potato and gravy sandwich, but the sandwich was beloved by these workers. But they spread the news of the sandwich. People came to this grocery store that these brothers had, and it spread like wildfire. Now, today, the po' boy is a French roll, a single-sided sandwich like a hot dog bun, filled with lettuce, tomato, mustard, mayonnaise, whatever you want. It does have to have mayonnaise, lettuce, and tomato to be the three staple ingredients. The ones I have here is fried shrimp, fried chicken, fried fish. And it's important because it's meant to feed the people in need. Going on, we've got, wrong way, gumbo. Gumbo, I feel, is the most important family item. There's no history of when it was made, but the history of the word gumbo comes from an African term. I'm going to butcher this. Kingombo, which is the term for okra. Because a lot of slaves were coming in, they called okra kigombo, which was used, is a popular ingredient in gumbo itself. It's not original to New Orleans, but it's what makes New Orleans. This is soul food. This is what makes New Orleans New Orleans. Because you make a pot of gumbo, you share it with your family, your neighbors. It's a family-style stew that consists of cooking flour and oil to make a roux, putting in what people in New Orleans call the Holy Trinity. It's a Cajun term for onions, celery, and green bell peppers. Everything up after that is up to you, the cook. It's traditionally served over rice. The seafood versions is only seafood, which is only shrimp and crawfish. You don't mix seafood and game. You don't do that. That is something a very Cajun people do not do. You do not mix shrimp with anything else. Next is crawfish etouffee. We're going to kind of go over this quickly. It's very similar to gumbo, though crawfish etouffee was kind of patented, for lack of a better word, in the 1950s, though it was made well before then. But because backwoods people in Louisiana that lived on the bayou, they didn't write this down. They just made it and ate it because it tasted good. And it was something you made for the people you loved. Going on, we've got the muffaletta. Muffaletta is important very closely to me because Sicilian immigrants that migrated to New Orleans, they would make this, and this is you eat half this, your friend eats half this, your coworker. This is a big sandwich, comprised of only cold cuts and an olive oil salad on top as your dressing. You're meant to eat this throughout the day. Muffaletta comes from the term muffaletta, which is the bread you'd use, which is a Sicilian bread. And don't let the sight surprise you. That sandwich is like this big. It's a really big sandwich. You're meant to eat this throughout the day with somebody. It feeds up to 4 people. This is a huge sandwich that was invented in New Orleans, and it drives home that you share your food with the people you love. Next is jambalaya. This is the most Spanish dish on my menu that I have, because the Spaniards were not able to create a paella. They didn't have the saffron or the cooking equipment at that time, but they were able to make their own lovely seafood rice, which is jambalaya. You can put sausage, you can put chicken, you can put duck, you can put anything you want. And it does come from the word jamon, the Spanish word jamon and paella. Jambalaya is the American version. I'm pretty sure Spanish people say jambalaya because it humbles you. You share this with the people you love. This is the Spanish. You can see how big this dish is. There's shrimps are little, so you could see this as you're following along. But this is something you make for the people you love because this is a family meal. Next, we have the beignets. Beignets are French fried dough covered in powdered sugar and traditionally served with a coffee, hot chocolate, something warm. This is your breakfast. You make batches and batches of these. I want to recall the Disney movie Princess and the Frog on how you gave these to people that you cared about. You served these up and you made the best damn beignets you ever could. This is also the only breakfast item on here. Because people had to get up and immediately go to work in the 17th and 18th century. They didn't have time to eat breakfast. That's why lunch and dinner was such a big deal. Now we're getting into the sweets. Pralines are a gift. You make them to give them to people for Christmas, for birthdays, for weddings. The original one is lost to time, although it was said to be milk, corn syrup, and halved pecans specifically. You mix them together and they turn into not quite a brittle, but not quite a fudge. They're the weird Cajun cousin of the two. But the reason why they're a gift is because you make them how you like them and you give them to the ones you love. And the last one on our menu, it's not quite a sharing one, but I just want to throw it in here because it's kind of a cool history. In 1950, after the Second World War, we start importing a lot of things. Fruit becomes a hotter commodity because it's not going to troops. So a chef in Louisiana, restaurant owner Owen Brennan, owner of Brennan's Restaurants, challenged his cooks to say, what's the best thing we can do with bananas for dessert? And so Chef Paul Blanc went, I'm going to cut them in half, I'm going to cook them in rum, flambe them, and serve hot bananas over ice cream. And it's delicious. Now, real quick, Cajun versus Creole. Cajun is that food you make for the people you care about. The ones you love. The big family-style dishes. Cajun food is food that comes from creativity. Promoting hunter-gatherer societies. These are my quotes, by the way. And they're stuff you can create in order to feed your family. That's why we talk about turtle, duck, chicken. Stuff you can do to feed your family. While Creole is using what you had, like the paellas, jambalaya. That's something that wasn't quite paella, but it was something you could make yours. And that's why New Orleans is important. Because the food it shares for the people you love. Here are all my sources. We are done. I am so happy that I was able to. I have 2 pages of sources. That's how much research I did on each of these dishes. And I just want to say, I've been having some technical issues, so this will be up in 2 parts. This is the end of part 2. Go back and watch part 1 if you haven't already. New Orleans does have much more deeper cultures. It's a crescent city on a river that gives so much to its people. The people's history, the wants and the values that they share are important. Certain things, down to the smallest details of the trim of the buildings, is important to the people. And the food that they eat to get them going through everyday life is what brings it home for all of them. Thank you. I've been Anthony Saludo, and you guys have a good one.